discovered how she turned an amazing cost-cutting move into a transformative data triumph. In the dim light of her makeshift office, Sarah sat hunched over her laptop, its glow throwing shadows on the walls, mirroring the turmoil brewing within her. The constant buzz of her notifications was a reminder of the relentless demands of work, but her mind was racing with thoughts of bills, looming budget cuts, and too eager faces to nurture at home. Every day felt like an uphill battle, where her ambition crashed against the hard surface of her reality. At 36, she had always been the smart one, but now, she felt silent, cloaked in uncertainty, surrounded by whispers of inefficiency that felt all too close to her. The recent announcement from the corporate office twisted around in her mind like a vice. Budget cuts meant layoffs, not just numbers, but people with families, friends she had built her own small life around. When they presented the ultimatum at the morning meeting, she felt her heart plummet. Glaring eyes glanced toward her as if testing whether she would speak up. Anxiety coursed through her, a cocktail of dread and determination mixing within. Her fingers ran nervously through her hair as doubt crept in. Was she being foolish to think she could pivot the company's course when so many already doubted her? Mom. Emily's voice floated in from the living room, a reminder of what was at stake. There would be no comfort in failure. Sarah's heart squeezed, propelling her thoughts back to spreadsheets filled with numbers that didn't seem to tell the straight story. A way out flickered in her mind like an inconsistent light bulb. What if she could propose a solution, a plan that would resonate not just with the management, but also with every worker sweating through the uncertainty? This could mean the difference between maintaining her space in the world or sinking into obscurity. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as day turned into night, her ambition collided with debilitating self-doubt. The air in her tiny room felt thick with pressure. Ideas danced at the edge of her consciousness, yet the dread of backlash from her more established colleagues clawed at her insides. Would they ridicule her? Dismiss her yet again? Would she be the lone voice in a room full of authority, only to slip back into the shadows if they struck down her proposal? As she pieced together data, her breath quickened. The data didn't lie. There were glaring inefficiencies to exploit, evidence she could present that could redefine their approach, but the stakes were immense. Sarah clenched her jaw, staring into the glossy graphs that reflected the opportunity and danger she faced. "You're being brave," echoed Emily's innocent words, but just beneath the surface, she felt the weight of her choices tightening around her throat. What if bravery led only to ruin? The thought twisted her stomach into knots, a cruel reminder that professionally, she was still an outsider, vulnerable to the provocation of peers seeking to protect their own interests. Just as the clock ticked closer to her day's end, she received a cryptic anonymous email, hinting at a hidden agenda behind the budget cuts. Anxiety invaded her limbs like ice. What had her superiors been up to while their eyes scrutinized her? The thrilling revelation ignited a spark within her, but also planted a seed of fear. Was this merely a distraction, or a chance to unearth deeper corruption? The boundaries of right and wrong blurred, filling her with goosebumps and a newfound desperation. Everything was about to change if she could only keep her head above water long enough to seize it. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself teetering on the edge of a precipice, flanked by uncertainty and an urgent desire for change. The email had ignited an internal fire, yet it contained the very essence of chaos that could either empower her or engulf her. Each day became an intricate dance of research and planning. She spent hours unraveling the numbers, plugging them into her analytical framework, dissecting every graph until patterns emerged like clues in a criminal investigation. As the weekend approached, she compiled her findings into a comprehensive presentation that she hoped would resonate not just as a plan, but as a lifeline for her colleagues. Her mind chanted a relentless mantra: the narrative must connect. A realization dawned upon her. She wasn't merely defending her position. She was advocating for the very people who had been swept under the weight of budgetary politics. This is not just a proposal, it's a mission that on Friday morning, Sarah summoned her courage for the strategic meeting with higher-ups. The boardroom was bathed in sterile light, the walls adorned with accolades and corporate bluster that could suffocate any daring idea. As she took a seat at the long table, her heart thudded against her ribs. The executives greeted her with polite indifference, their minds likely already made up regarding the impending cuts. But as the meeting unfolded, Sarah felt a shift within herself. The confidence that had been a flickering flame morphed into a steady blaze. The moment she opened her mouth to present her proposal, she spoke not just of spreadsheets, inefficiencies, or budgetary constraints, but of real people, fathers, mothers, families potentially losing their livelihoods. Each figure represented a life, a story. To her surprise, awareness flickered across some faces. Questions emerged, drawn from the fog of skepticism. She answered with precision, returning their doubts with increased resolve. Through charts showcasing potential outcomes and illustrating significant cost savings, her message became resonant. Something unexpected happened. They leaned in, began to listen, but just as her confidence surged, distractions arrived. Accusations surfaced regarding her motives and the source of the anonymous email. The murmurs of dissension were now an undercurrent, casting shadows upon her burgeoning triumph. She was reminded of the tightrope she walked, a perilous balance between ambition and vulnerability. A particularly harsh critique came from Mark, the CFO, known for his relentless pursuit of fiscal discipline. Are you suggesting that you have a way to uncover the mismanagement without implicating yourself or anyone else? His voice dripped with skepticism, challenging her newfound composure. Her breath caught for a moment. The room hung in silence, the air charged with tension. But it wasn't just about self-preservation. Remembering the faces of her co-workers, the fear of losing something monumental, her choice crystallized. What I have is a chance to challenge assumptions, reveal issues hidden in plain sight, and, yes, to protect what we've all built together. In that instant, something within her unlocked. The barrier she'd placed around her ambition crumbled, replaced by solidarity with the very team who had doubted her. Sarah made eye contact with each executive, drawing strength from the weight of their gazes. "We can rise above this," she declared, feeling an unwavering determination surge through her. Suddenly, the dynamic shifted. Mark's skepticism began to thaw. "What do you need?" he asked, a hint of curiosity breaking through the facade. Her heart raced, adrenaline mixing with hope. The stakes were still sky-high, yet a fresh dialogue had opened, one that could amplify her vision. Would they support her, or would the tides of doubt rise again? As she prepared to answer that pivotal question, she felt a twist of fate on the horizon. A game-changer was brewing, one that could either turn their fate around or expose unthinkable treachery. The moment hung in the balance, and with every word, she would redefine everything. What dangers lay hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? And, more crucially, would she have the strength to confront them? As Sarah faced the boardroom filled with skeptical executives, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her body. The question posed by Mark, the CFO, reverberated in her mind. "What do you need?" It was an opening, a lifeline, but also a risk. She understood that each word she chose could either build momentum for her vision or conjure fear and retreat. "I need access to the financial audits from the past 2 years and a team to help analyze the data," she answered, her voice steady, striking a balance between assertive and open. "This isn't just about cutting costs. It's about evaluating our efficiency and finding value in what we do." Mark's expression shifted from skepticism to contemplation as Sarah sensed the tide beginning to turn. The executives exchanged glances, weighing her request against the prospects of uncovering deeper inefficiencies. Fear mingled with curiosity. But she knew this was not merely a matter of numbers. She was rallying not just for data, but for integrity, for transparency, for the heart of the organization, a cause bigger than herself. What if the investigation uncovers other, more serious mistakes? One of the board members interjected, their voice laced with apprehension. "We can't afford to operate under a cloud of uncertainty." "With uncertainty comes opportunity," Sarah replied, gathering her resolve. "Ignoring problems only allows them to fester. We must confront our issues head-on to truly thrive." This report could be a chance to prevent further setbacks. The room fell quiet, all eyes fixed on her, the tension palpable. As discussions ensued, offering an array of concerns and doubts, Sarah remained vigilant, each rebuttal sharpening her focus. This was proving to be a personal proving ground, each inquiry throwing her deeper into introspection, forcing her to confront not just their doubts, but her own insecurities. Was she capable of leading this charge? Would she find the strength to maintain her resolve amidst the looming risks? "Fine," Mark finally conceded, his tone begrudging but the challenge woven within it. "If we agree to your investigation, you'll need to lead it yourself. But know this, you'd better be prepared for the consequences if things go sideways." Heart-thumping, Sarah met his gaze. "Be assured, I won't shy away from the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it becomes." The meeting concluded with an air of tension, but it was a productive discontent. As she exited, Sarah's thoughts raced. Now it was real, her vision would soon be manifest, but at what cost? Trust had been tentatively forged, yet the potential repercussions loomed like dark clouds on the horizon. Over the following days, Sarah immersed herself in the work, delving deep into the numbers, analyzing every transaction, every decision. Yet, as she peeled away layers, uncovering inefficiencies, she hesitated, fearing that her revelations might come at a personal price. The office landscape felt different now, each corner echoing the whispers of doubt and potential sabotage. It wasn't long before she stumbled onto a discrepancy within a major department's financial records, unexplained expenditures that painted a picture of negligence or worse, malfeasance. The implications sent a chill down her spine. Could this be the consequence of her inquiry? And more terrifying still, what if it pointed to something more sinister at play? Caught in a whirlwind of budding revelation and burgeoning fear, Sarah wrestled with her next steps. The path ahead was cluttered with warning signs, each demanding her courage in spades. How could she advocate for transparency when the truth could put her in direct conflict with some very influential figures? The clock was ticking, and each passing moment intensified the urgency of her decision. Would she dare to unearth the truths hidden beneath layers of financial obfuscation, risking not just her credibility, but perhaps her very position? As she weighed the severity of her discoveries, Sarah realized that the moment had come to either confront her fears or retreat into the comfort of ignorance. Silence could be complicity, a choice she refused to accept. The next step would define not only her career, but her value as a leader. Would she uncover the truth, risking everything, or would she succumb to the fear that threatened to engulf her? With newfound determination surging within, she resolved to confront the realities that lay ahead. The precarious balance between ambition and integrity hung like a veil before her, ready to be pierced. What if uncovering the truth not only jeopardized her position but implicated someone she trusted? Would she be ready for that burden? Sarah's heart raced as she sat in the small, cluttered office she decommandeered for her investigation. The flickering fluorescent light overhead failed to illuminate the gravity of her discoveries, but they were all-consuming, each piece of information haunting her like a specter. This was no longer merely about cutting costs. It had transformed into a moral quandary, a labyrinth of choices that threatened to ensnare her. She scrolled through the financial records again, determination battling against the gnawing fear in her gut. The unexplained expenditures were not just numbers. They represented decisions made and lives impacted. All her instincts screamed at her to report what she had found, to shine a light on the shadows cast by questionable transactions, but the names tied to those transactions unsettled her. Colleagues who, until now, she had trusted. Flashes of doubt flickered in her mind. Was she ready to expose her own team? What if this led to accusations, rumors, or worse, firings? The weight of potential ramifications loomed larger than the discrepancies themselves, a burden threatening her newfound resolve. Taking a deep breath, Sarah thought back to the board meeting, to the moment she stepped into uncharted territory. Confronting the truth had ignited a fire within her, yet here, confronted by the specificity of her findings, the heat felt more like an impending conflagration. The path she had chosen demanded clarity and transparency, yet clarity meant obliterating her previous understanding of trust. "Okay, think," she whispered to herself, mentally outlining her options. She could try to gather more evidence, connecting the dots to ensure her suspicions were not based on mere speculation. Alternatively, she could draft a report, laying bare her findings and presenting them to Mark, requesting guidance on how to proceed. Both paths carried risks, but retreating was no longer an option. Fueling her decision-making was the realization that this was also a test of her leadership, her willingness to act in the best interest of the organization, despite the possible personal cost. In her previous roles, it had always seemed easier to maintain the status quo than to challenge it. But diving headfirst into this investigation had revealed a deeper hunger for authenticity and ethics, a vision for the company that transcended revenue sheets. As she prepared to compile her report, an insistent ringing interrupted her train of thought. It was Mark's number. With a mix of fear and resolve, she answered, "Hello? Sarah, we need to talk. Could you come to my office?" His tone was clipped, laced with an urgency she hadn't expected. Her stomach knotted as she recognized the significance of that request. The timing felt ominous, as if the board had somehow caught wind of her findings. With each step to his office, thoughts battled within her. Would he applaud her efforts or reprimand her for delving too deeply? Mark was waiting, leaning against his desk, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "I just got off the phone with our legal team," he began, "and they have concerns about the discrepancies you discovered. We need to discuss our next move carefully." Those words struck Sarah like a lightning bolt, igniting the uncertainties that had woven themselves into her psyche. She understood the gravity of the situation. This was the point of no return. Was she prepared to navigate this morally treacherous ground, armed only with her convictions? "Mark, I believe it's vital we address these issues transparently. Ignoring them could lead to even bigger problems down the line," she stated, feeling the urgency pooling in her chest, forcing her conviction forward. He studied her intently, and for a moment, she felt exposed, as if he were weighing her worthiness to lead. But as he nodded slowly, something flickered in his gaze, perhaps respect, perhaps skepticism. "I don't know if you realize just how much is at stake here." "Then let us make sure that what's at stake is handled correctly," she countered, her voice steady, but her heart pounding. Mark's gaze shifted as he contemplated her words carefully. "All right, let us brace ourselves for fallout. We'll initiate a formal review," he stated finally. The weight of his agreement momentarily exhilarated her, a shared commitment to transparency, but as their conversation continued, Sarah felt an undeniable chill creeping closer. The storm was brewing, and in its eye lay the truth she had yet to confront. Would her commitment to integrity risk the loyalty she had once cherished? How far would she have to go to uphold her newfound values? And as the weight of her next steps pressed on her shoulders, she prepared for the inevitable confrontation both with the truth and with the people she had once trusted most. Navigating this treacherous terrain would define not just her position but her very identity as a leader, and with that understanding, Sarah steeled herself for the impending conflict. What truths lay waiting to be unearthed as she ventured further down this uncertain path? As the formal review began, Sarah felt the tense atmosphere envelop her. The conference room buzzed with murmurs, an undercurrent of anxiety that mirrored her own. She prepared a comprehensive presentation, each slide a carefully structured argument laid out with precision. Yet, as she faced her colleagues, people whom she had trusted and worked alongside, uncertainty gnawed at her, casting shadows on her resolve. Mark opened the meeting, introducing the purpose with a somber tone. "We're here to address the findings Sarah has uncovered regarding financial discrepancies. It's crucial we approach this matter with transparency and integrity." He gestured towards her, allowing Sarah to take center stage. With a steadying breath, she stepped forward, the weight of the situation resonating in the audience's expectant silence. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clicked through her slides, presenting the data methodically. These expenditures are unaccounted for, and I believe we must investigate their origins to maintain the trust of our stakeholders, she asserted, her voice clear despite the rapid thrum of her heartbeat. As she articulated the figures and finer details, fragments of doubt flickered across the faces of her colleagues. Their expressions were a mix of concern and disbelief. She knew revealing these findings would agitate the waters, yet she also recognized it as a pivotal moment, one that could either uphold or dismantle the ethical foundation of the company. Are you suggesting some of us may be complicit in these discrepancies? Liz, one of her former confidants, interjected, her eyes narrowing defensively. The question hung in the air like a noxious gas. Sarah's heart sank, and for an instant, she hesitated. This wasn't just about numbers. It was about relationships, trust, and the potential implications for everyone involved. But she steeled herself against that familiar impulse to retreat into safety. I'm suggesting we explore all angles, including the possibility of unintentional oversight, she replied, choosing her words carefully. Their focus shifted from her findings to each other, palpable tension crackling like static electricity. Whispers surged, circulating accusations even before any formal investigation had begun. Sarah realized she was standing on a precipice. The aftermath of her courage was breeding dissension among the ranks. Mark tried to regain control. Let us focus on the process, not the individuals. The review can clarify any misunderstandings. But as he spoke, Sarah sensed that the damage was already done. She would be held accountable not only for her findings, but for how her colleagues perceived her motivations. Back in her office later that evening, the discontent echoed in her mind. She was pushing against years of complacency, challenging the status quo, yet she felt more isolated than ever. What led her here? What part of her ambition had crossed the line? The ethical dilemmas swirling around her felt heavy and chaotic, sowing seeds of self-doubt and frustration. Reflecting on her earlier motivations, Sarah's resolve crystallized amidst the fog of uncertainty. She was driven not by personal gain, but by the integrity she wished to instill in her organization. The need for ethical clarity ignited a new sense of purpose within her. She needed to gather allies in her quest for truth. The next morning, she approached a few colleagues under conditions she thought would be friendly: Alice, a seasoned accountant with a history of integrity, and Leo, whose aversion to the gray areas of their profession was well known. Both had pedigrees of ethical conduct, and together they could bolster her initiative to uncover the truth. "Can we meet?" she asked them casually, her tone light despite the weight of her intentions. "I want to discuss the recent review and gauge how we can tackle any fallout together." Murky anxieties clung to Sarah, but she felt an inkling of hope. Being forthright about her findings could not only salvage her reputation, but could also fortify a collective commitment to integrity within. The team, as they gathered, the small room felt imbued with a sense of solidarity. Sarah began to share her findings again, but this time with an open invitation for discourse rather than confrontation. What we're facing is more than just numbers. It's about setting the standard for our company's values. There's strength in transparency, and I want us to be on the right side of this. With each passing moment, she saw the flickering shadows of doubt in her colleagues' expressions subside, replaced with the cautious light of agreement. Yet just as she started feeling a sense of direction, an unexpected email pinged into her inbox, the subject line jolting her. Urgent. Upcoming meeting with the board. What would they demand from her next? How long could she sustain this newfound alliance before the storm of scrutiny intensified? The walls felt closer. The sense of impending confrontation loomed like a storm cloud, ready to pour uncertainty over everything she had fought to establish. Sarah's heart raced as she read and reread the email, the words urgent, upcoming meeting with the board echoing like a drumbeat in her mind. She felt the foundations of her resolve tremble under the weight of potential repercussions. Knowing the scrutiny that would come with her findings, she prepared herself mentally for the impending confrontation. The board meeting loomed on the horizon, but Sarah was determined to take control of the narrative before it spiraled. She spent hours crafting an outline for her presentation, focusing not just on the facts and figures, but also on the implications of the discrepancies, how they could threaten the company's long-term integrity if left unresolved. This wasn't merely about rectifying errors, it was about restoring trust, and she would need to take a stand. Focus on clarity, Sarah, she muttered to herself as she reviewed her slides with meticulous care. Every bullet point needed to resonate with purpose. She understood that deep-rooted misconceptions about her motivations could be just as damaging as the data itself. This revelation ignited a fire within her. Clarity wasn't just a communication strategy, it was a lifeline for her career. When the day of the meeting arrived, Sarah's stomach churned as she entered the boardroom. The faces in the room were a mix of curiosity and apprehension, each member aware that the stakes were high. Mark sat at the head of the table, his expression a mask of professionalism, but the tension crackling between them was palpable. "Thank you all for gathering," he began, his voice steady. "Sarah will now present her findings regarding recent financial discrepancies." As she stepped forward, she could feel all eyes on her. She had prepared for this moment, yet standing before her superiors brought forth a fresh wave of anxiety. But then, she remembered the faces of Alice and Leo, their quiet support reminding her that she was not alone. With a deep breath, she opened her presentation. Slides glided effortlessly, charts, graphs, and bullet points combining to paint a clear picture. These figures show a pattern of unexplained expenditures that have potential implications for our operational integrity, she stated, emphasizing each word. "We must address them proactively to safeguard our stakeholders' trust." As she spoke, bolts of anticipation ignited the room, yet the murmurs of discontent from the previous meeting lingered like ghosts. She could feel them, swirling around in the air, pulsing through the lines of dialogue exchanged between board members. Worried glances exchanged, whispers veiled in skepticism. Then, during a pivotal moment, one board member raised a hand. "Are you implying there may be unethical behavior at play, Sarah? Is that what you're suggesting?" His tone was sharp, accusation woven into his curiosity. The tension gripped her throat like a vice, but she pressed onward. "I'm not suggesting wrongdoing, rather unintentional oversight. I believe this can be resolved and will only strengthen our future operations," she countered, firm in her voice. She wasn't just defending her findings, she was fighting for the morale of the entire team, but as her words hung in the air, she couldn't ignore the chilling silence that followed. The board members exchanged knowing glances, and she sensed that her message was getting lost in the noise of distrust. Did they see her as an enemy or a harbinger of truth? Even as she wrapped up her presentation, questions flooded and skepticism mingled with curiosity. "How do we know this won't lead to more complications?" One asked. "What do you plan to do to rectify these issues?" Another queried, their eyes piercing through her resolve. Shifting in her seat, Sarah's mind raced. She had to respond not with mere facts, but with a proposal, a plan that spoke to integrity and action. "What I suggest," she began, piecing together her thoughts, "is a task force to investigate these discrepancies further. Transparency is key, and by having multiple eyes on this, we can heal any fractures in trust that may have formed." The murmurs quieted, contemplation replacing impatience. There it was, her desperate attempt to not just uncover problems, but to build solutions. Yet doubts nagged at the back of her mind. Did she have the support needed to follow through? And what perceived fallout lay ahead? Suddenly, an unexpected voice broke through her thoughts. Mark leaned forward, his gaze direct. "I believe this might be a step in the right direction, Sarah. Let us discuss next actions." As the conversation began to shift, a cautious optimism replaced her earlier tension. Yet as she sat back, absorbing the small victories of the meeting, a shiver ran down her spine. How deep did this go? Would her attempts at reform be met with further resistance? Before she could contemplate further, she caught sight of a shadow moving at the back of the room, a figure she had not anticipated. Was that Liz, the accuser from the previous meeting, watching her with a sharp gaze? Sarah's heart raced again, but this time not from fear. She realized that the upcoming storm wasn't just about numbers, but a power struggle woven tightly around ethics and integrity. What kind of battle lay ahead, and who would stand alongside her in the efforts to reclaim honor for their work? The challenges deepened, but in that moment, she understood the true fight was just beginning. The following days slid into an agonizing routine for Sarah as she meticulously navigated the aftermath of the meeting with the board. The echoes of her voice still reverberated in her mind. "I believe this can be resolved and will only strengthen our future operations." Yet, the more she reflected, the more she questioned the stability of the groundwork she had attempted to lay wide in the office. She found herself carrying the weight of both expectation and apprehension. Alice and Leo continued to bolster her spirits, yet Liz's sharp gaze haunted her. Each interaction with Liz became an exercise in restraint. The unsaid words hung heavy in the air, tainted by distrust. Sarah braced herself for an inevitable confrontation, aware that avoidance wouldn't protect her from scrutiny. Determined to fortify her stance, Sarah devoted her evenings to preparing for what lay ahead. She dived into the financial discrepancies with a renewed vigor, combing through data, searching for patterns, and categorizing the findings. Each number revealed stories of potential mismanagement and unaccounted funds, yet part of her wondered if the deeper issues at play were more institutional than she initially perceived. Her late-night sessions, illuminated by the harsh glow of her laptop, turned into a cycle of obsession where success and failure felt inseparable. With every revelation, a burgeoning sense of confidence began to emerge. The task force meant to investigate the discrepancies had been approved. The wheels of accountability were finally in motion. But she also knew that, with power, scrutiny amplified, and any misstep would be magnified. During one intense session, she stumbled upon something curious, a pattern not just of discrepancies, but of oversights that pointed toward a culture of silence within the financial departments. Employees were hesitant to report errors, fearing backlash. The realization struck her. It wasn't merely about fixing numbers. She had the potential to shift a company-wide mindset. If she could advocate for a change in culture, perhaps a more open and transparent atmosphere could flourish. With her newfound clarity, Sarah crafted a proposal that included workshops aimed at encouraging communication and fostering an environment where mistakes could be discussed openly, without fear. The next task force meeting would serve as a battleground for her ideas, pitting the status quo against her drive for reform. Just as she felt exhilarated by her plans, a familiar knock echoed through her office. Liz entered, and the air thickened with tension. "We need to talk," she stated flatly. The challenge Sarah had anticipated was here, but could she withstand the examination? "About what?" Sarah asked, her heart racing, yet a stubborn thread of defiance anchored her voice. "You trying to reshape the narrative around here? It's risky, don't you think?" Liz's tone dripped with skepticism, her eyes narrowing in critical assessment. "You're walking a fine line, and the board may not appreciate you taking too much initiative." Sarah clenched her jaw. Liz stood as a barrier, yet at the same time, a reflection of her own fears. The successful presentation had instilled a sense of agency within her, but Liz's words twisted the knife. Had she overstepped? "Making sure the company's integrity remains intact is worth the risk," Sarah replied, feeling the pulse of determination surging through her as she spoke. "Besides, if we don't address these issues, we'll only be covering cracks that will eventually break the foundation." Liz's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. For a moment, the air shifted, revealing an unexpected connection, a shared dedication to the company's future. But Liz recovered quickly. The moment of understanding soon veiled once more by scrutiny. Sarah felt the divide growing, but within her, a quiet resolve solidified. She recognized that every encounter with Liz forced her to confront her own motivations and fears. In securing her place as an advocate for change, she would also have to stand firm in the face of opposition. As Liz turned to leave, a threat lingered in the air, a final warning wrapped in doubt. "Just remember, Sarah, not everyone will be thrilled with your meddling." After Liz departed, Sarah sank back into her chair, grappling with the complexities surrounding her mission. With the task force meeting on the horizon, she sensed something monumental was dawning. akin to standing at the threshold of a crossroad where one path led to compliance and the other to challenge and transformation. The stakes were high, but the potential for growth was even higher. With her heart racing, she formulated her strategy for the meeting ahead. What could she present that would dazzle the board while standing her ground against dissent? The spark for change had ignited, and the true battle for integrity loomed just ahead. As she plotted her next moves, a thought crossed her mind. Would this revolutionizing endeavor empower her, or would it unleash unforeseen consequences? Did she have the guts to face what came next? The convergence of hope and dread pulsated through her, a reminder that the war for transparency was only just beginning. The task force meeting loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. Sarah prepared meticulously, poring over her notes, rehearsing her points until they felt like second nature. Each figure danced to her mind, the patterns she discovered morphing into a narrative that was no longer just numbers, but a story waiting to unfold. As she arrived at the conference room, the air was thick with anticipation. A long, slick table dominated the space, seated with familiar but slightly intimidating faces, board members, department heads, including Liz. Sarah took a deep breath, inhaling determination. This was her moment. "Thank you all for joining," she began, her voice steady despite the thrumming in her chest. "Today, we stand at a pivotal juncture. I've analyzed the recent financial discrepancies, and I believe they point to larger issues within our workplace culture." Her words hung for a moment, awaiting a reaction. Slowly, she introduced her findings. The scattered figures came together, revealing distinct trends of silence and fear among employees, leading to overlooked mistakes. A few heads nodded. Many remained impassive, as if weighing the implications of her assertions. Liz's expression was inscrutable, but Sarah caught the faintest flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "If we want to rectify these discrepancies, we must first create an environment where employees feel safe to voice their concerns," she continued, unveiling her proposal for workshops. These would focus on communication and accountability, promoting a culture of transparency. By encouraging an open dialogue, we can build trust and ensure everyone is engaged in the company's success. The board members murmured amongst themselves, and the tension thickened. Liz leaned forward, her posture radiating authority. "Sarah, while I appreciate the rationale behind your suggestions, do you really believe these workshops will actually shift the ingrained behaviors in a corporate structure as established as ours?" A challenge. The weight behind her words was palpable. Confidence teetered on edge, but Sarah took a deliberate step forward, meeting Liz's gaze. "Yes. This isn't just about fixing numbers. It's about changing our mindset. It's time we break the cycle of silence. We need to empower our team, or we risk complacency and further discrepancies." The momentum shifted. Some of the attendees were visibly engaged now, considering Sarah's vision. As discussions flowed, she interwove personal anecdotes of her own past experiences, highlighting the transformative power of openness in her previous workplace. With each story, her authenticity shone through, revealing not just her professional commitment, but her personal stake in the company's journey. Yet, amid the engagement, an underlying current of hesitation surged. The realization that resistance would still loom challenged her resolve. Sarah recalled her late-night preparations, the countless hours spent refining her approach, and an idea formed. She decided to address the apprehension head-on. "Change is daunting, I understand. But stagnation is far worse," she said, her voice rising with an urgency that was almost palpable. "What if, instead of fearing the unknown, we embraced it? What if we allowed our failures to be stepping stones toward improvement?" The room fell silent, contemplating her words. For a moment, Sarah saw glimmers of potential realization on their faces. She had ignited sparks of curiosity, nudging them towards a vision of innovation amid their comfort zones. Finally, Liz spoke again, this time with measured seriousness. "We will need measurable outcomes," she stated, her voice firm yet softened, as if setting down the gauntlet. "Absolutely. We can implement assessments to track progress after each workshop, ensuring accountability both for participants and for myself, Sarah quickly replied, emboldened. This isn't merely a one-off initiative. It's the beginning of a needed shift in how we operate. As discussions broke out again around the table, the initial tension began to dissolve. Even Liz seemed to consider the merits of Sarah's vision, their earlier confrontation now evolving into something resembling collaboration. By the meeting's conclusion, Sarah felt a surge of triumph. She hadn't just presented numbers. She had introduced a vision that could transform the company's approach to finance and culture alike. Yet, beneath the exhilaration lay an inkling of unease, a sense that, while she had made headway, the most formidable battles still awaited. As the board members voted on her proposal, Sarah caught Liz watching her intently. While there were nods of approval from many, one question remained. Could Sarah outrun the relentless doubts of the past, or would the ghosts of her predecessors loom larger as she progressed? As she gathered her papers, a thought nagged at her. Had she truly prepared herself for what might come next? The meeting had opened doors, but the reality of operational change still lay beyond, shrouded in uncertainty. The transformation was far from complete, and the war for transparency continued onward. Deciding what would come next would be pivotal, not just for the company, but also for the woman she was becoming. Would she fortify her new authority, or would internal and external resistance shake her confidence? The weeks that followed the meeting were a whirlwind for Sarah. Initial euphoria gave way to the weight of expectations. Liz's guarded approval lingered in Sarah's mind, morphing into a relentless pulse of tension she could not ignore. Each time Sarah encountered Liz in the hallways, she felt the silent scrutiny of someone who had set the stakes higher. Liz had become both a mentor and a potential adversary, a force she couldn't neatly categorize. With workshops fast approaching, Sarah devoted herself to designing a curriculum that addressed not only communication but also the deeper roots of organizational anxiety. Each session was an exercise in balance, how to nurture candor among colleagues without exposing them to harsh repercussions. She annotated each module with painstaking detail, mindful of the broad spectrum of personalities that would fill the room. The meticulousness of her approach mirrored the work ethic she had honed over the years. Every checkbox on her list felt like a stepping stone toward not only professional success, but personal growth. 2 days before the first workshop, Sarah encountered a minor catastrophe. In an unfortunate hiccup, the logistics team mistakenly booked the wrong room, and the session intended for the following week was about to be pushed back. A small fire of panic ignited within her. Each time she envisioned her plan crumbling due to diehards resisting change, the ghost of self-doubt whispered its poisonous lies. But this time, she refused to succumb. She rallied her team, engaging them to brainstorm solutions as if she were articulating a new victory mantra. As they hashed out possibilities, Sarah noticed a shift in her colleagues. Laughter began to bubble into their discussions, voices grew louder, and ideas morphed into collaborative actions. Suddenly, the looming workshop became a shared challenge rather than Sarah's solitary burden. They sought alternatives, and with some quick thinking, they secured a different but suitable space, breathing a sigh of relief as the clock ticked closer. That evening, as she gathered her thoughts at home, Sarah found herself evaluating the day's events. Seeing her colleagues actively stepping up had ignited something inside her, realization that leadership wasn't just about her direct input but about elevating others, creating an environment where everyone felt capable of contributing. It was a profound shift in her perception, reinforcing her commitment to the vision she had crafted so carefully. On the day of the workshop, she walked into the room, pulse steady and spirit high. She anticipated resistance. It was a certainty she accepted. But instead of focusing on potential backlash, she focused on the shared objective of fostering a space for open dialogue. The room filled gradually, the attendees murmuring among themselves until Sarah welcomed them, her voice steady. She kicked off the session by laying out the purpose: the free exchange of ideas meant to reduce workplace inefficiencies. She saw Liz enter, taking a seat at the back. It set her heart racing, but she pushed it down. As she spoke, Sarah drew on personal anecdotes, articulating her own childhood fears and triumphs to normalize vulnerability among adults. Midway through the session, a participant hesitantly raised his hand. "What if we share our biggest mistakes and learn from each other?" he asked, a tinge of trepidation lacing his tone. Sarah smiled, a genuine warmth flooding her. "Exactly. By illuminating our missteps, we illuminate the path forward," she affirmed. This moment ignited an avalanche of conversations, each mistake recounted, shedding light on new possibilities. The atmosphere transformed, camaraderie surfacing amid uncertainties. As the workshop progressed, Sarah's confidence grew. She wasn't merely leading a session, she was enabling transformations. By the closing moments, she felt exhilarated. She hadn't just delivered a presentation, she had woven connections and dismantled barriers. Yet, as the applause ceased and participants began to exit, Sarah's gaze lingered on Liz. The unfathomable challenge ahead loomed, and a twinge of nervous anticipation taunted her. Could this workshop be the catalyst for a deeper change? Or would the corporate machine ultimately resist and revert to its old patterns of behavior, rendering her efforts in vain? Questions twisted in the back of her mind. She had made strides, yes, but the fear of failure gnawed at her resolve. The feeling that her authority could be overturned at any moment loomed large. As she began to collect her materials, a clear thought hit her. She was finally standing on the edge of a precipice of her own making. The next challenge awaited her, not just in the form of Liz's formidable presence, but in something that had arisen within her, a burgeoning doubt threatening to eclipse her progress. Could she rally the same tenacity that had brought her here, or was she destined to become ensnared in the very structures she sought to dismantle? As weeks rolled into months, Sarah realized that her journey had transcended mere survival. She had embarked on a transformative path both in her professional sphere and within her own psyche. The workshops she initiated had begun to foster an environment where dialogue flourished and colleagues voiced concerns without fear. Each session became a crucible for collective growth, and with each unfolding narrative, the culture of the organization was shifting. The real turning point came unexpectedly during the monthly review meeting. The same executive team that had once regarded her with skepticism now sat at attention, their demeanor markedly different. There was a newfound sense of openness echoing throughout the conference room as Sarah laid out the progress achieved from the workshops. The data reflected not only an increase in efficiency, but also improved morale among employees. With each slide, Sarah felt the tension dissipate, her confidence bolstering with every approving nod. "Your initiative has truly made an impact," Mark nodded, genuine acknowledgement etched across his face. "We've seen improvements not only in the numbers, but in the way our teams communicate." The room buzzed with agreement, a chorus validating her efforts. The thrill of recognition surged within her, solidifying her resolve to uphold this transformed culture. In that moment, Sarah's perspective shifted. She understood that leadership wasn't merely about orchestrating change, but also inspiring others to embrace it. She no longer felt the weight of self-doubt pressing on her shoulders. Her vision had manifested not through solitary endeavors, but through fostering teamwork, unity, and mutual respect. The foundation had been rebuilt, and now she was among the pillars holding it up. A significant transformation happened within Sarah's personal life as well. Emily and her younger brother frequently joined her in her office after school, beaming with curiosity. "Mom, you talk about work like it's your second home now," Emily observed one day, her voice laced with admiration. "You seem happy." The realization that her newfound passion was visible to her children deepened her sense of fulfillment. This was not simply about professional accolades, it was about teaching her children resilience, courage, and the importance of integrity. Each evening, Sarah reveled in recounting small victories to Emily, demonstrating that success was built through hard work, tenacity, and collaboration, a lesson she wanted to imprint firmly in their hearts. Her growth culminated at the annual corporate gala, where she was unexpectedly awarded the Innovator of the Year. As she stepped onto the stage, light flooded around her, illuminating the faces of her peers who applauded with fervor. The accolades and respect synergized into one powerful validation of her journey. "I stand before you not just as an individual," she began, her voice resonating with authentic pride, but as a voice for collective integrity. She spoke of the importance of their high standards aligning with their corporate vision, urging all to consider their role in shaping not just their business outcomes, but their moral compass. The applause felt like an echo of her victory, not just hers, but everyone's. As the evening faded into night, Sarah found solace in her reflection. She had conquered her self-doubt. Through perseverance and vulnerability, she had ultimately transformed into a leader recognized for her ability to unify, inspire, and bring integrity to the forefront of the corporate landscape. This was her achievement, a transformation that extended beyond the confines of her office, permeating every aspect of her life. The shadows of uncertainty that once loomed over her had dissolved into a vibrant mural of success. Sarah was no longer silent. She had truly found her voice. Now, as you reflect on Sarah's incredible journey, it's your turn to take the next step. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly does make a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand just how vital it is to amplify these messages.